The siege of Karath Prime Fleet, Admiral Cyrena Voss stood on the command deck of the Confederate flagship Sovereign Will and watched her fleet die. The battle had begun 3 days ago with hope. 800 warships of the Velthari Confederation had formed a defensive sphere around Karath Prime, their formation tight and disciplined. Orbital defense stations added their firepower to the mix. Planetary shield generators hummed with enough power to stop a small moon. By every calculation, by every strategic model, they should have been able to hold. But the Drachnol had brought 2,000 ships, and they had brought something new. "Another shield collapse on Station 7, reported her tactical officer, his voice cracking with exhaustion. "They're using those gravity weapons again. We can't compensate fast enough." Cyrena watched the holographic display as another cluster of friendly signatures winked out of existence. The Drachnol gravity disruptors were tearing holes in their shield coverage, creating gaps that lasted only seconds but allowed perfectly timed torpedo strikes to slip through. It was like fighting an enemy who could open doors in your armor whenever they wished. "How many ships do we have left?" she asked. 187 combat effective. Another 40 with partial systems." The tactical officer paused. "Down from 800, Admiral." Cyrena closed her eyes for a moment. 600 ships destroyed or disabled in 3 days. Tens of thousands of crew members dead. And the Drachnol kept coming, their insectoid warriors apparently feeling no fatigue, no grief, no hesitation. The door to the command deck slid open and High Marshal Torvin entered. The Velthari commander was tall and thin, his blue-scaled skin pale with stress. His species had held Karath Prime for 3 centuries. His ancestors had built the cities below. His children lived in those cities now, looking up at a sky filled with war. "The planetary shields are at 30%, Torvin said. His voice was calm, but Cyrena had served with him long enough to hear the despair underneath. "My engineers estimate 18 hours before complete failure. And then? And then the Drachnol land, and my people—" He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Everyone knew what the Drachnol did to conquered populations. They did not take slaves. They did not negotiate surrender. They simply eliminated any species they considered inferior, which was all of them. Cyrena turned to her communications officer. "Get me a priority channel to Confederation High Command, maximum encryption." The connection took several minutes to establish. When the face of Grand Admiral Petrov appeared on the screen, Cyrena felt a small spark of hope. Petrov was a legend, a commander who had won battles against impossible odds. "Admiral Voss," Petrov said, "I've been monitoring your situation. You've done remarkable work holding as long as you have. Sir, we need immediate reinforcement. The Drachnol have deployed weapons we've never seen before. Our defensive calculations were based on outdated intelligence." Petrov's expression tightened. "I know, and I wish I had better news." He paused, and in that pause, Cyrena felt her hope begin to die. "The nearest major fleet is 6 days away at maximum speed. We're repositioning as fast as we can, but the hegemony chose their timing well. Our forces are scattered across the sector, responding to smaller attacks." "6 days," Cyrena repeated. "We have 18 hours. "I know." Petrov looked older than she had ever seen him. "I'm sorry, Cyrena. Hold as long as you can. Make them pay for every kilometer, but prepare evacuation protocols for essential personnel." The channel closed. Cyrena stood in silence, feeling the weight of command pressing down on her shoulders. Essential personnel. That meant abandoning billions of civilians to die, while a few thousand fled to safety. "There must be something else we can do," she said, though she did not know who she was speaking to. Perhaps herself. Perhaps whatever gods might be listening. High Marshal Torvin stepped closer to her. His voice was quiet, meant only for her ears. "There is one option we have not considered." Cyrena looked at him. "I'm listening." "There is a species whose ships could reach us in time. A species whose military power could change this battle." Torvin's scales rippled, a sign of deep discomfort among his people. "But no one has asked them for military aid in over a century. No one has wanted to." Cyrena felt a chill run down her spine. She knew exactly who he meant. Everyone in the galaxy knew, even if they rarely spoke of it directly. "The humans," she said. Torvin nodded. "The humans." The command deck had gone quiet. Every officer had stopped their work, listening. Cyrena saw fear on their faces, but also a desperate hope. "They're neutral in most conflicts," Cyrena said. "They trade with everyone, fight for no one. Why would they help us?" "Because we will ask," Torvin said simply, "and because the humans have strange ideas about what wars are worth fighting. They ignore conflicts over territory, over resources, over political power. But the Draknol," he gestured toward the viewport, where distant explosions still flickered. "The Draknol commit genocide. The humans have opinions about genocide." Cyrena thought about what she knew of humanity. They had joined galactic civilization barely 2 centuries ago, a young species from an unremarkable planet in an unfashionable corner of the galaxy. They had been dismissed at first as primitive, aggressive, short-lived creatures with no special abilities. Then came the Kreth War. She had been a young officer when news of that conflict reached her homeworld. The Kreth Dominion had ruled 60 species through terror and brutality. They had attacked a human colony, killing 12,000 civilians, expecting the young species to submit like all the others. The humans had not submitted. What followed was not a war in any conventional sense. It was an execution. The humans dismantled the Kreth Dominion in 18 months. Not defeated, not conquered, dismantled. When it was over, Kreth civilization had effectively ceased to exist. Their military was destroyed, their government collapsed, their homeworld was... No one quite knew what had happened to their homeworld. The humans did not discuss it. And then, strangest of all, the humans had helped the 60 subjugated species establish their own governments. They had provided aid, shared technology, rebuilt what the Kreth had destroyed. And then they had withdrawn, asking for nothing in return except that no one attack them again. The galaxy had learned 2 lessons from that war. First, humans did not start conflicts, but they finished them absolutely. Second, their mercy afterward was somehow more terrifying than their wrath, because it proved the destruction had not been passion. It had been policy. "Even if they respond," Cyrena said slowly, "they might not arrive in time." "Human ships are faster than ours," Torvin replied. "Their technology is different, more advanced than they usually admit." He looked at her with eyes that held centuries of Velthari pride, now bent by desperation. "Admiral, I am asking you to call them. I am asking you to save my people, even if it means owing a debt to the most dangerous species in the galaxy." Cyrena looked at the holographic display. Another Confederate ship had just been destroyed, its crew of 300 dying in the cold vacuum of space. In 18 hours, billions more would join them. She turned to her communications officer. "Open a channel on the emergency frequency, widest possible broadcast, human military encryption." "Admiral?" The officer looked uncertain. "What should I say?" Cyrena thought for a moment. Then she began to speak, and her words went out into the darkness of space. "This is Fleet Admiral Cyrena Voss of the Velthari Confederation, requesting immediate military assistance. Kareth Prime is under attack by the Draknol hegemony. Our defenses are failing. Civilian population numbers in the billions. The Draknol do not take prisoners." She paused. "We are asking for help from anyone who will answer, from anyone who cares about what happens next." She nodded, and the officer ended the transmission. "Now we wait," she said. Outside the viewport, the battle continued. Ships died. People screamed their last breaths into uncaring void. The Draknol armada moved closer, patient and relentless, confident that victory was only a matter of time. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, the message traveled outward at the speed of light, carrying a desperate plea to the one species that everyone feared. Cyrena did not know if the humans would answer. She did not know if they could arrive in time. She did not know what price they might demand for their help. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. If the humans did come, the Draknol would learn why the galaxy had spent a century being very, very careful not to make humanity angry. She hoped it would be enough. The reputation. The response came faster than anyone expected. Admiral Voss had been preparing for another wave of Draknol attacks when her communications officer suddenly sat upright, his face showing an expression she could not quite read. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission on human military frequencies. It's close. Very close." "How close?" Voss asked. Before the officer could answer, a new signature appeared on the tactical display. A single ship emerging from hyperspace at the edge of the combat zone. It was smaller than a Draknol battleship, larger than a Confederate frigate. Its hull was dark gray, almost black, with clean angular lines that seemed designed more for efficiency than intimidation. "This is Captain Marcus Cole of the United Nations Ship Temperance," came a voice over the communication channel. The speaker sounded calm, almost casual, as if he were announcing his arrival at a social gathering rather than a desperate battlefield. "We received your distress call, Admiral Voss. We were conducting a routine patrol in the neighboring system. Happy to offer assistance." Voss stared at the display. One ship. They had received one ship. "Captain Cole, I appreciate your response, but I must be direct with you. We are facing an armada of nearly 2,000 enemy vessels. Our fleet has been reduced to less than 200. One ship, even a human ship, cannot change these odds." There was a brief pause. When Cole spoke again, there was something in his voice that Voss could not quite identify. Amusement, perhaps, or patience. "I understand your concern, Admiral. Let me assure you that additional forces are being mobilized as we speak. In the meantime, the Temperance will do what it can to improve your situation. With your permission, I'd like to open communications with the Draknol commander." Voss exchanged glances with High Marshal Torvin, who had remained on the command deck since his earlier suggestion. The Velthari commander gave a small nod. "Permission granted, Captain, though I doubt the Draknol will be interested in negotiation." "We'll see," Cole said simply, switching to open broadcast. Far across the battlefield on the command deck of the Draknol flagship Eternal Conquest, Supreme Commander Kethrax was savoring his imminent victory when an officer interrupted his thoughts. "Supreme Commander, we are detecting a new vessel. Unknown configuration. It's broadcasting on open frequencies." Kethrax turned his attention to the display. His compound eyes studied the small ship that had appeared behind the enemy lines. Compared to his massive battleships, it looked almost fragile. "A single ship," he said. "The Confederation must be truly desperate if they're calling in favors from minor species." "Supreme Commander," said another officer, this one older, his carapace marked with the scars of many campaigns. "That ship configuration matches human military design." The command deck went quiet. Kethrax noticed that several of his officers had stopped moving entirely. "Human?" He considered this for a moment. "What are humans doing in this sector?" Before anyone could answer, the human ship began broadcasting. "This is Captain Marcus Cole of the United Nations Ship Temperance to the commander of the Draknol fleet. I am here to inform you that Kareth Prime is now under human protection. You have 1 hour to begin withdrawing your forces from this system. If you fail to comply, you will face the consequences of your decision. This is not a threat. This is a statement of fact. Temperance out." Kethrax stared at the display in disbelief. Then he began to laugh, a harsh clicking sound that echoed through the command deck. "One ship," he said. "One ship gives me an ultimatum. The humans have grown arrogant in their isolation." He turned to his tactical officer. "Send 50 ships to destroy that vessel. Make it spectacular. Let the Confederation see what happens to those who interfere with the hegemony." "Supreme Commander," the scarred officer spoke again, "I strongly advise against engaging human forces. Our intelligence files contain extensive documentation of the Kreth War. The tactical implications alone—" "The Kreth were weak," Kethrax interrupted. "They had grown soft from centuries of easy conquest. We are not the Kreth. We are the Draknol. We have never been defeated." He gestured sharply. "Send the ships, now." The order was obeyed. 50 Draknol warships broke formation and accelerated toward the lone human vessel. In the tactical center of Eternal Conquest, Senior Intelligence Officer Vextar watched the deployment with growing unease. Unlike Kethrax, he had studied the humans extensively. Unlike Kethrax, he understood what they were facing. He pulled up the classified files on his personal display. The Kreth War documentation was extensive, compiled from survivors, refugees, and intercepted communications. Most of it had been suppressed by High Command, deemed too disturbing for general distribution. The humans had not just defeated the Kreth, they had systematically dismantled everything the Kreth had built. Their military response had been precise, patient, and utterly without mercy. They had tracked down every Kreth fleet, every military installation, every weapons factory. They had done it in 18 months, a campaign that should have taken decades. And then, when it was over, they had shown mercy to everyone except the Kreth themselves. They had helped the conquered species rebuild. They had provided food, medicine, technology. They had asked for nothing in return. Vextar found that mercy more terrifying than any weapon. It proved that the humans were not acting from emotion. They were not angry, not vengeful, not driven by passion. They had simply decided that the Kreth needed to be removed from existence, and they had done so with the same efficiency that a surgeon might remove a tumor. The galaxy had spent a century being very careful not to give the humans a reason to make similar decisions about anyone else. And now Kethrax was sending 50 ships to attack them. Vextar considered speaking up again, but he knew it would be useless. Kethrax was too proud to retreat, too confident in his own superiority. He would not listen until he was forced to understand. On the human ship Temperance, Captain Cole watched the approaching Draknall formation on his tactical display. His crew moved with quiet efficiency around him, preparing systems, running final calculations. 50 ships, Captain, his executive officer reported. Standard attack formation, estimated contact in 6 minutes. Cole nodded. Have they tried to communicate? No, sir. They appear to be treating this as a pure combat engagement. Unfortunate. Cole sat back in his command chair. All right, let's give them their lesson. Weapons free, defensive pattern Omega. Lethal force is not authorized. I repeat, lethal force is not authorized. We're going to show them what we can do. We're not going to kill them for being stupid. The crew acknowledged his orders. The Temperance began to move, accelerating not away from the attacking ships but directly toward them. On the Confederate flagship, Admiral Voss watched in horror as the human ship rushed toward 50 enemies. What is he doing? She demanded. That's suicide. High Marshal Torvin said nothing. His eyes were fixed on the display. The Draknall ships opened fire. Hundreds of weapon systems unleashed their fury at the tiny human vessel. Plasma bolts, kinetic rounds, guided missiles, all converging on a single target. None of them hit. The Temperance moved through the fire like water through a net. Its point defense systems tracked incoming projectiles with impossible precision, destroying them meters from the hull. Its engines adjusted course constantly, finding the gaps in the firing patterns that should not have existed, and then it began to fire back. The human weapons did not look impressive. No massive plasma bursts, no spectacular energy beams, just small, fast projectiles that seemed to ignore shields entirely. Each shot struck a precise location on each target. Engines, weapon systems, communication arrays, never life support, never crew quarters. Just the systems needed to fight. In 11 minutes, 50 Draknall warships drifted dead in space. Their crews were alive, their ships intact but completely disabled. Captain Cole's voice came over the open channel again. Supreme Commander Kethrax, that was your one free lesson. The next engagement will not be so gentle. You now have 49 minutes to begin your withdrawal. On the Confederate flagship, Admiral Voss realized she had forgotten to breathe. One ship, she whispered. One ship did that. Torvin's voice was equally quiet. And it was holding back. Did you notice? Not a single Draknall died. The humans disabled 50 warships without killing anyone. He turned to look at her, and his expression was unreadable. They wanted us to see that they could have killed everyone, and they chose not to. Before Voss could respond, her sensor officer spoke up, his voice strange and distant. Admiral, we're detecting new hyperspace signatures. Multiple signatures. Many signatures. The display updated. At the edge of the system, space itself seemed to tear open as ship after ship emerged from hyperspace. Human ships, cruisers, destroyers, battleships, carriers. And at the center of the formation, something massive. Something that made even the largest Draknall battleship look small. 300 ships, the sensor officer reported. The lead vessel is broadcasting identification. UNS Consequence. Admiral Helena Park, commanding. Voss felt something she had not felt in 3 days. Hope. On the Eternal Conquest, Supreme Commander Kethrax stared at the display as 300 human warships took position around his armada. His 50 ships were drifting uselessly, their crews screaming for rescue. The enemy fleet had lost nothing. For the first time in his long career of conquest, Kethrax began to understand what fear felt like. The arrival Admiral Helena Park stood on the bridge of the UNS Consequence and surveyed the battlefield. The dreadnought was the largest vessel humanity had ever constructed. Nearly 3 kilometers of armored hull, packed with weapons that most species could not even understand. It had never been deployed in combat before. She hoped it would not need to be deployed in combat now. "All ships report ready, Admiral," her tactical officer announced. "Captain Cole's Temperance is requesting permission to join the main formation." "Granted. And get me a channel to the Confederate flagship. I want to coordinate with Admiral Voss before we proceed." The communication was established quickly. On the screen, Park saw a tired woman in a Confederate uniform, her face showing the strain of 3 days of desperate fighting. "Admiral Park," Voss said, "I cannot express how grateful we are for your arrival. Your timing is remarkable." "We move fast when we need to," Park replied. "I've reviewed the tactical situation. Your people have done an impressive job holding as long as you have." The Draknol committed significant forces to this attack. "Nearly 2,000 ship," Voss confirmed, though Captain Cole has already reduced that number somewhat. Park allowed herself a small smile. "Marcus does enjoy making an entrance." She turned serious again. "Admiral, I need you to understand something. We're going to try to end this without further bloodshed. That's our preference. But if the Draknol refuse to withdraw, we will not allow them to take this planet. Do you understand what that means?" Voss was silent for a moment. "I think I do. I hope you don't. I hope you never have to see what we're capable of when we stop holding back." Park straightened in her chair. "For now, pull your remaining ships back to a defensive perimeter around the planet. Protect the evacuation routes if things go wrong. Let us handle the Draknol." "Understood, Admiral, and thank you." The channel closed. Park turned to her communications officer. "Open a broadcast to the Draknol fleet. All frequencies." The officer nodded. "Channel open, Admiral." Park stood and faced the main viewport, where the Draknol armada was visible as a swarm of distant lights against the stars. "Attention Draknol forces. This is Admiral Helena Park of the United Nations Space Force. I am commander of the human fleet that has just arrived in this system." She spoke clearly and calmly, her voice carrying no anger, no threat, just simple statement of facts. "Captain Cole has already explained your situation, but I will make it clear one final time. This world is under human protection. You will withdraw your forces immediately." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I understand that withdrawal may be difficult for your commander to accept. Pride is a powerful thing, so I offer you this. Leave now, and you can tell your people whatever story you wish. Say the defense was stronger than expected. Say you achieved your objectives and chose to depart. We will not contradict you. Your fleet remains intact. Your honor remains intact. Your soldiers go home to their families." Another pause. On the tactical display, she could see the Draknol ships holding position. No movement toward withdrawal. No movement toward attack either. They were waiting, uncertain. "But if you choose to fight," Park continued, her voice dropping slightly, "then you should understand exactly what you are choosing. We have studied your hegemony. We know your tactics, your weapons, your strategies. We know your strengths." She leaned forward slightly. "We know your weaknesses. Every ship in this system will be disabled or destroyed before you can reach the planet. Every invasion force you deploy will be eliminated before it can land. And when this battle is over, we will follow you home." She let that last statement hang in the air. "We do not want war with your species. We have never wanted war with anyone. But if you force us to fight, we will not stop until we are certain you can never threaten anyone again. Ask the Kreth how that worked out for them." She straightened again. "You have 30 minutes to begin your withdrawal. Use them wisely. Park out." The channel closed. Park returned to her command chair and sat down. "Now we wait," she said. On the Eternal Conquest, Supreme Commander Kethrax stood in silence as the human admiral's words echoed through his command deck. Around him, his officers waited for orders. None of them spoke. None of them moved. Senior Intelligence Officer Vextar stepped forward. Supreme Commander, I have compiled a tactical analysis based on the engagement between the Temperance and our forward group. Kethrax turned to face him. Proceed. The human vessel demonstrated several capabilities that do not match our current intelligence estimates. Vextar pulled up a holographic display showing the brief battle. Their point defense systems achieved a 99.7% intercept rate against our weapons fire. This exceeds any known technology by a significant margin. Their offensive weapons appear to bypass our shields entirely. We do not understand how this is possible. Shields can be upgraded, Kethrax said. Weapons can be countered. Supreme Commander, with respect, that is not the most concerning finding. Vextar changed the display to show the current human formation. The Temperance is classified as a heavy cruiser in human documentation. It is a mid-range vessel, not their primary combat platform. The ships that have just arrived include vessels that dwarf the Temperance in every measurable category. He highlighted the consequence. That dreadnought alone has more weapons capacity than our entire fleet combined, according to our estimates. And our estimates may be conservative. Kethrax stared at the display. His compound eyes moved over the human formation, counting ships, analyzing positions. They sent 300 ships to defend a world that is not theirs, he said slowly, against an enemy they have no formal alliance with. Why? Vextar hesitated. Our psychological profiles of humans suggest they respond strongly to what they call moral imperatives. Actions they consider unjust trigger a disproportionate response. The Kreth attacked a human colony and killed civilians. The humans destroyed the entire Kreth civilization. We have not attacked any human worlds. No, Supreme Commander, but we have declared our intention to exterminate the population of Kareth Prime, billions of sentient beings. Our own records of previous conquests are public knowledge. Vextar's voice was careful, measured. The humans may view our actions as similar enough to warrant a similar response. From across the command deck, another voice spoke. It was old, rasping, coming from a communications officer who rarely said anything at all. I survived the Kreth War. Every officer turned to look at him. The old Draknal stepped forward, his carapace marked with ancient scars, his movements slow and careful. I was young then, a junior officer on a patrol ship. We were stationed far from the fighting, but we heard the reports. His compound eyes were distant, focused on memories from decades past. The humans did not fight like any species we had ever encountered. They did not seek glory. They did not take trophies. They did not make speeches or demands. They simply appeared, destroyed everything military, and moved on to the next target. He paused, his breathing labored. But the worst part was not the destruction. The worst part was what came after. When it was over, when the Kreth were nothing but scattered refugees, the humans helped everyone the Kreth had conquered. They gave food to species that had been starving. They shared medicine with species that had been dying. They rebuilt worlds that had been devastated. The old officer looked directly at Kethrax. They showed mercy to everyone except the Kreth, and that mercy was more terrifying than their weapons, because it proved they were not monsters. They were not driven by rage or hatred. They had simply decided that the Kreth needed to be removed, and they removed them. Carefully, deliberately, completely. He took a shaky breath. If we fight them today, they will decide the same thing about us. Silence filled the command deck. Kethrax stood motionless for a long moment. His entire career had been built on never retreating, never showing weakness. The hegemony respected strength above all else. If he withdrew now, his rivals would smell blood. His position would be weakened. His legacy would be tarnished. But if he fought, there might not be a hegemony left to have a position in. 20 minutes remaining on their deadline, Vextar said quietly. Kethrax looked at the display again. 300 human ships, the massive dreadnought at their center, and somewhere in that formation, the small cruiser that had disabled 50 of his warships without killing anyone. Without killing anyone. The humans could have destroyed those ships, could have killed thousands of his soldiers. Instead, they had precisely disabled each vessel, leaving the crews alive. It was a message, a demonstration, a warning. This is what we can do when we're being gentle. Open a channel to the human flagship, Kethrak said finally. His voice was flat, emotionless. Tell Admiral Park that the hegemony accepts her terms. We will begin withdrawal immediately. Around him, his officers released breaths they had not realized they were holding. The war was over before it truly began. But on the UNS Consequence, Admiral Park did not relax. She had dealt with pride before. She had dealt with commanders who changed their minds, who sought revenge, who could not accept defeat. Maintain battle readiness, she ordered. Until the last Draknol ship leaves this system, we assume nothing. She was wise to be cautious, because on the Eternal Conquest, Kethrax was already making different calculations. Withdrawal today did not mean surrender forever. He would retreat, yes. He would save his fleet. But he would also remember this humiliation, and he would find a way to make the humans pay for it. Somehow. The choice for 3 hours, it seemed like peace would hold. The Draknol fleet began its withdrawal in orderly formation. Ships moved toward the system's edge, preparing for hyperspace jumps. On the Confederate flagship, Admiral Voss allowed herself a moment of relief. On the UNS Consequence, Admiral Park maintained her vigilance but permitted herself to hope. Then everything changed. Supreme Commander Kethrak stood alone in his private quarters aboard the Eternal Conquest, staring at the wall. His mind churned with humiliation and rage. 3 centuries of Draknol expansion, and he would be remembered as the commander who retreated from a single human fleet without firing a shot. His communication device chimed. He answered it and found himself looking at a face he had not expected. Grand Marshal Vethnar, Supreme Military Commander of the entire hegemony, speaking from the capital world. Kethrax, the Grand Marshal said, I have been monitoring your situation. Grand Marshal, Kethrax straightened. I was about to file my report. The tactical situation. I know the tactical situation. I also know what you're thinking. The Grand Marshal's compound eyes glittered. You're thinking about your legacy, your career, your pride. Kethrax said nothing. What if I told you there was another way? The Grand Marshal leaned forward. The humans are confident, perhaps too confident. They believe their reputation alone will protect them, that no species would dare challenge them directly. They have 300 warships in system. We saw what one of their cruisers did to 50 of our ships. One cruiser against 50 ships that were attacking blindly, using standard tactics against a superior opponent. The Grand Marshal's voice grew intense. We have studied the Kreth War, Kethrax. We know how the humans fight. They are precise. They are methodical. They are also predictable. They follow rules. They try to minimize casualties. They hold back their true power until they believe it is necessary. Kethrax felt something cold settle in his stomach. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that the humans don't expect you to attack. They think you're defeated. They think you're retreating. They've already begun to relax their formation. The Grand Marshal pulled up a tactical display. If you strike now with everything you have, you could destroy a significant portion of their fleet before they respond. Yes, you would lose ships, perhaps many ships, but you would prove that humans can be hurt. You would prove they are not invincible. And if we fail, then you die as a hero of the hegemony. But you won't fail entirely. Even if you can't win, you can bleed them. You can make them pay a price. The Grand Marshal's voice dropped. The galaxy is watching, Kethrax. Every species is wondering if the humans can truly be challenged. If you show them that humans can be hurt, that they can be made to suffer, you change everything. Kethrax stared at the display. Part of him knew this was madness. Part of him remembered the old officer's story, the terror of the Kreth War, the methodical destruction of an entire civilization. But another part of him, the part that had conquered worlds and crushed rebellions and never once retreated, that part whispered that the Grand Marshal was right. The humans were arrogant. They expected compliance. They were not prepared for defiance. Do it, the Grand Marshal said. Strike now. Make history. Kethrax closed his eyes. When he opened them, his decision was made. All ships, halt withdrawal, he ordered over the fleet channel. Prepare for immediate attack. Target the human dreadnought. All weapons, full power. We strike together. On the UNS Consequence, Admiral Park was reviewing after-action reports when alarms began screaming across her bridge. "Admiral, the Draknol fleet has reversed course. They're coming back. Fast." Park was on her feet instantly. "Battle stations, all ships to defensive formation." "Admiral, they're not just attacking." Her tactical officer's voice was tight with disbelief. "They're attacking us. All of them. Every ship in their fleet is converging on our position." Park watched the display as nearly 2,000 enemy ships turned and accelerated toward her fleet. It was insane. It was suicide. And it was happening. "They think they can overwhelm us with numbers," she said quietly. "They think if they hit us hard enough and fast enough, they can win through sheer aggression." "Can they?" Park's expression hardened. "No, but they can make us kill them." She took a deep breath. "All ships weapons free. Lethal force is authorized. Repeat, lethal force is authorized." The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for centuries. The Draknol came in waves, throwing everything they had at the human formation. Their weapons fire filled space with deadly light. Their ships showed no fear, no hesitation, pressing forward even as the human weapons tore them apart. And the human weapons were terrible. On the Confederate flagship, Admiral Voss watched in horror and awe as the human fleet revealed its true capabilities. The restrained, precise strikes that had disabled 50 Draknol ships earlier were gone. In their place were weapons that cut through shields like paper, that shattered hulls with single shots, that turned massive warships into expanding clouds of debris. The consequence led the defense. Its weapon systems firing in coordinated patterns that created overlapping fields of destruction. Enemy ships that entered those fields simply ceased to exist, but even the smaller human vessels were devastating, each one accounting for dozens of Draknol casualties. Yet the Draknol kept coming. Kethrax watched from the eternal conquest as his fleet died around him. Ship after ship vanished from his display. Thousands of his soldiers were dying every minute, but the human fleet was not untouched. He could see it now. Human ships were taking damage. Some were even being destroyed, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of fire. "We're hurting them," he said, his voice rising with desperate hope. "We're actually hurting them." He was right. 6 human vessels had been destroyed. Another dozen were damaged. The Draknol were paying 100 lives for every human casualty, but they were proving that humans could bleed. On the consequence, Admiral Park saw the same numbers. 6 ships lost, 1,800 crew members dead. The price of the Draknol's desperation. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported, "the Draknol flagship is attempting to break through to the planet. If they reach atmosphere, they could deploy ground forces." "Not happening." Park's voice was cold. "Concentrate fire on the eternal conquest. I want that ship disabled." The consequence turned its attention to Kethrax's flagship. The dreadnought's main weapon spoke, and the eternal conquest shields collapsed in seconds. Precise strikes disabled engines, weapons, communications. The massive ship went dark, drifting helplessly. But Kethrax was not finished. From his disabled bridge, he watched his remaining ships continue the attack. They were down to 800 vessels now, then 600, then 400. The human fleet had lost 8 ships. The exchange rate was absurd, impossible, catastrophic. And still the Draknol came. Admiral Park made a decision. She opened a broadcast to the entire battlefield. "Draknol forces, your flagship has been disabled. Your commander cannot lead you. This battle is over. Stand down now and you will be allowed to surrender with honor. Continue fighting and you will die for nothing." She paused. "This is your only warning." For a long moment, nothing changed. The Draknol ships continued their attacks, driven by momentum and training and the fear of showing weakness. Then, one by one, they began to stop. It started with a single destroyer that powered down its weapons and transmitted a surrender signal. Then another. Then a dozen more. The wave of capitulation spread through the fleet like wildfire. Crews who had watched their comrades die by the thousands decided they did not want to join them. Within 30 minutes, the battle was over. The surviving Draknol ships drifted in space, their weapons silent, their crews waiting for the mercy they were not sure would come. Admiral Park surveyed the battlefield. 1,800 Draknol ships destroyed or disabled, nearly 200,000 enemy soldiers dead, and on her side, 8 ships lost, 600 crew members killed. The humans had won. The cost had been terrible, but they had won. "Begin rescue operations," she ordered. "I want every survivor recovered, every wounded treated, every dead honored." She looked at the drifting hulk of the Eternal Conquest. "And get me a channel to whatever passes for command on that flagship. Kethrax and I need to have a conversation." In the ruins of his command deck, Supreme Commander Kethrax heard the human admiral's voice asking to speak with him. He was wounded, his carapace cracked in several places. Most of his officers were dead, but he was alive, and he would have to explain to the galaxy why he had thrown away an entire fleet for nothing. He accepted the communication. Admiral Park's face appeared on his damaged display. "Supreme Commander," she said, "your crews will be rescued and repatriated. Your ships will be returned after demilitarization. You will leave this sector and not return." Her voice was flat, without emotion. "These are not terms for negotiation. This is what will happen." Kethrax stared at her. "Why?" he asked. "Why let us live? We attacked you. We killed your people." Park's expression did not change. "Because killing you accomplishes nothing. Because your crews were following orders from a commander who made a foolish choice. Because we are not the Draknol." She leaned slightly forward. "And because I want you to go home and tell everyone what happened here. I want every species in the galaxy to know what we can do when we're forced to fight. And I want them to know that even after all of this, we chose mercy." She paused. "Don't make us regret that choice, Supreme Commander. Don't make us come to your homeworld. Because if you do, we won't be merciful again." The channel closed. Kethrax sat in the darkness of his ruined ship, surrounded by death, and understood for the first time what the old officer had been trying to tell him. The humans were not monsters. They were something far more dangerous. They were people who knew exactly what they were capable of and chose every single day not to be that thing until someone forced them. The lesson 6 months had passed since the Battle of Kareth Prime. The planet had been rebuilt. Human engineers had worked alongside Confederate construction crews, repairing the orbital stations, restoring the planetary shields, strengthening the defenses. The cities below showed no sign of the war that had nearly destroyed them. Children played in parks. Families gathered for meals. Life continued. Admiral Cyrena Voss stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city, watching the sun set over the mountains. The sky was painted in shades of orange and purple, beautiful and peaceful. It was hard to believe that 6 months ago, she had been certain she would never see another sunset. Behind her, a door opened. She turned to find Captain Marcus Cole stepping onto the balcony. He was in civilian clothes now, his uniform packed away for the journey home. The human fleet had begun its withdrawal that morning. Their work was done. "Captain Cole," she said, "I was hoping to see you before you left." "Admiral." He moved to stand beside her, looking out at the same view. "Beautiful world you've got here." "It is now." She was quiet for a moment. "Thanks to you. Thanks to your people." Cole shrugged. "We just did what needed to be done." "You did more than that." Voss turned to face him. "I've been thinking about this for months. The question that kept me awake at night. And I finally decided I needed to ask you before you left." "What question?" "Why?" The word came out simply, carrying all the weight of everything she had witnessed. "Why show mercy? Why let them live? You could have destroyed the Draknol fleet completely. You could have pursued them home, done to them what you did to the Kreth. After what Kethrax did, after he attacked you during a ceasefire, no one would have blamed you." Cole did not answer immediately. He looked out at the sunset, his expression thoughtful. "Did you know I lost friends in that battle?" he said finally. 8 ships, 600 people. Some of them I had served with for years. Good people. People with families waiting for them back home. "I'm sorry." "So am I." He took a deep breath. "When Kethrax made his choice, when he turned his fleet around and attacked us, I wanted to destroy them all. I wanted to chase them back to their homeworld and burn it to ash. I wanted to make them pay for every single life they took." His voice was calm, matter of fact, as if he were discussing the weather. That calmness made his words more frightening than any rage would have been. But we didn't do that, he continued. Do you know why? Voss shook her head. Because we learned something about ourselves a long time ago. Something terrible. Cole turned to meet her eyes. We learned that we are very, very good at destruction, better than we ever wanted to be. Back on our homeworld, before we ever reached the stars, we spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing each other. We built weapons that could destroy cities in seconds. We developed strategies for genocide. We came within a hair of wiping ourselves out more than once. He paused, letting that sink in. When we finally made it to the stars, we thought we had moved past all that. We thought we had grown up. And then we met the Kreth. Voss had heard stories of the Kreth War, but never from someone who had lived through it. She found herself listening intently. The Kreth attacked one of our colonies, 12,000 civilians dead in a single day, and something activated in us, something old and dark and terrible. All those instincts we thought we had buried came roaring back to the surface. Cole's voice grew quieter. We destroyed them, not just their military, their entire civilization. We took them apart piece by piece over 18 months, and when it was over, there was almost nothing left. They deserved it, Voss said. After what they did, maybe, Cole cut her off gently. Maybe they did, but that's not the point. The point is what it did to us. The point is that we looked at ourselves after it was over, and we didn't like what we saw. He turned back to the sunset. We swore after that war that we would never become what we were capable of being. We would never let that darkness take control again. Every enemy we spare, every chance we give, is a choice, a reminder to ourselves that we're still human. Voss considered his words carefully. But what if mercy fails? What if Kethrax comes back? What if the Drachnol decide to try again? Cole smiled, but there was no warmth in it. For just a moment, Voss saw something ancient and cold behind his eyes. Something that reminded her of deep space and eternal darkness. Then we stopped being merciful, he said simply, and everyone who ever wondered why the galaxy fears us will have their answer. The sun had nearly set now. The first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. We don't show mercy because we're weak, Admiral, Cole said. We show mercy because we know exactly what we could do instead. We hold ourselves back every single day, every single decision, because we have to. Because if we ever let go completely, there would be no one left to stop us. He extended his hand and Voss shook it. Take care of your world, Admiral. I hope we never have to come back here under circumstances like these. So do I, Captain. She held his hand a moment longer. And thank you for everything. Cole nodded and walked away, disappearing into the building behind them. Voss stayed on the balcony for a long time, watching the stars come out. Somewhere up there, the human fleet was gathering for its departure. 300 ships that could have conquered the galaxy if their crews had wished it. Instead, they were going home, leaving behind a world they had saved and an enemy they had spared. In the months that followed, the galaxy slowly absorbed the lessons of Kareth Prime. The Drachnol hegemony retreated to its core territories, weakened and humiliated. Rumors spread of internal conflict, of subject species rising up, of a civilization questioning everything it had believed about strength and conquest. Grand Marshal Vethnar, who had urged Kethrax to attack, was quietly removed from power. Kethrax himself lived in disgrace, a broken commander haunted by the memory of everything he had lost. Throughout the galaxy, species who had once considered expansion and conquest began to reconsider. Not because they feared the humans would stop them directly, but because they understood now what human attention could mean. Better to build than to destroy. Better to trade than to conquer. Better to grow together than to grow alone. And on 1,000 worlds in 1,000 languages, teachers began telling a new story to their students. The story of Kareth Prime. The story of the battle that was lost until someone called the species everyone feared. The story had many versions, but they all ended the same way. True power, the teacher said, is not the ability to destroy. Any fool with enough weapons can destroy. True power is the ability to destroy and choosing not to. True strength is looking at your enemy, knowing you could end them completely, and offering mercy instead. The humans understood this. The humans lived it every day. And that understanding, that choice made fresh with every sunrise, was why the galaxy feared them. Not because of what they would do, but because of what they could do and didn't. High above Karath Prime, the last human ships engaged their hyperspace drives and vanished into the stars. Behind them, they left a world at peace, an enemy defeated but alive, and a lesson that would echo through history. Admiral Voss watched them go, and she made a silent promise to herself. She would remember this day. She would remember what the humans had taught her about power and mercy and the courage it took to choose compassion over vengeance. And if anyone ever asked her about the species everyone feared, she would tell them the truth. The humans were not feared because they were strong. They were feared because they were strong enough to be gentle, and that made all the difference.